fiber, you have wireless, 4G, so on. So many things are available, and all of them kind of implement IP in one form or the other. Even the wireless IoT technologies that you see implement IP because of its ability to adapt and change and evolve over a period of time. Several other protocols which came around that time have died out, but IP remains stable mainly because of its ability to adapt and to be modified. So you will be either using entire IP stack or you will be using modified IP stacks to implement your system. Please remember, whenever we are talking about this IP and all those things, these are not something which you will be directly dealing with when you are uh, implementing an IoT network. Right? If you're implementing an IoT network directly, you will have devices with you which have already got implementations of this in the form of ASICs or in terms of chips which are already available to you. So you do not have to manually sit around coding the protocol stack and implement it and then run the whole thing on it. It comes to you pre-built in the form of mostly system on chip or something like that, and then you basically use them to transfer the data. But it is always good to know what protocol is being used and what will be the challenges that you will face as a result of it. So what we are going to give you is basically a theory of this, but in during most of the implementation phases, this gets completely encapsulated from you. You will not be able to see what kind of protocol stack is implemented and what kind of packet loss is happening. Those kind of things are not directly visible to you. You will just be implementing, you write the data to the cloud, you read the data from the cloud, that's it. But what is happening at the back end, those things will be relevant if you are going more into this detail. So if you once you're at the network architect level, you will require all this information. At the lower engineer level, you are kind of given all the information like beforehand itself. You will be given the hardware, just implement this. But why that particular hardware has to be chosen? What will be the data requirements? Like what will be the latencies involved? What kind of security is involved? All those things will usually happen when you are slightly higher up in the chain. Usually when you are at the project lead level or team lead level, about 8 to 10 years of experience. At that time, you will be working on these kind of things. Overall picture. So based on your overall system assessment, you will be picking up your hardware. You will be choosing what kind of OS to be used in that, or if you want to use an OS free system, what should be used, what kind of access technology to use, then so on and so forth. What kind of batteries to use, everything will come into picture at that level. At the lower level, when you join the company immediately, you may not have understanding or you may not be given a choice to pick up all those things, because that will usually come from a higher level, because that is where the costing and the what do you say, the monetary part of the whole thing lies. Because eventually, whether you like it or not, most of the implementations are driven by cost considerations. You may have very good hardware available to you, but you will not be allowed to use it because overall cost of the system may go beyond the budget. So you may be constrained to use devices which are not very good. And then you may be thinking around, why is my team lead or my project lead asking me to work with this hardware when so much good things are available? The reason is because one, cost. Second, we do not have access to a higher picture at that point of time in your career, because there may be some use cases, or there may be some features in your system or in your hardware which you have been told to use, which may be relevant for future implementations or maybe future scaling up issues. So that is where this whole process kind of starts. So you will gradually build up to that level, but don't get disappointed if at the beginning itself you are not given entire control over the IoT project. There will be about 10 or 15 people working in a small team even. So it's going to be a big task even for small implementations if you are working for any of the IT companies. Like TCS, Wipro, Infosys, all of these people have IoT divisions. And they all take up major large scale projects for this, ranging from logistics to uh, supply chain management to all those things. Everywhere IoT is used nowadays. So you will find that you may be ending up working in that team, and as you progress over a period of time, you will know why this IP stack has to be studied and why you need to know all these things and which protocols to be implemented and what hardware to be used. Does this justify a little bit on why we are learning so much theory, at least in this class?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So yeah, so this is the idea. Now what has happened is that I think we have already gone through this a little bit, but I'll just repeat it again because we missed a couple of classes. So yeah, so the idea is that we IP has mainly worked so far because of the idea that IETF, we have come across this term before also. IETF has kind of improved the IP stack over a period of time, over a period of decades, wherein it still becomes relevant. So this is typically the case. You see that communication technology has evolved over a period of time. As I said, we have moved on from copper wire communication to optical fiber to the home connections. Some of you may be having FTTH type connections, direct fiber cable coming to your home. You don't have a separate connection for cable TV, you don't have a DTH, you don't have a telephone connection separately. All of them comes through optical fiber cable. So like technology has evolved from a situation where you did not even have access to a copper wire connected phone to a situation where you have broadband 100 Mbps connections coming straight to your home. So even in all those scenario changes that have taken place over the past 20 years, you find that IP has remained versatile, IP has remained relevant. IPv4 to IPv6, we have still continued to evolve. And another thing is ubiquity. Ubiquity mainly because you find IP people who are working with the networking engineers who are very familiar with IP technology, because it's been around for 30 years. So people know what IP is, how it works, what kind of stacks are there, what kind of security issues are involved. All those things are already very, very, very well understood. Because of that, what happens is that you have a very good talent pool to work with. So if IoT as a system is being implemented, and if you're using IP protocol stack as the networking layer, you already have a big talent pool to choose from. That is why most of these IT companies are doing very well with IoT also. Because IoT as such is not a totally radically new technology which will require somebody like Tesla to come up. The traditional IT companies, Infosys, TCS, Wipro, the same people can slightly tweak their engineers, tell them to learn a few more things. And the same engineers who are working on the IT related projects can work on IoT projects also, because the stack is mostly similar. And another thing is scalability. If you remember, scalability was a very major issue with IoT systems. You remember the IoT networking challenges? Hello? Anyone? Yeah. So I think we kind of mentioned that net scalability was one of the major challenges for IoT systems. And when you have those kind of scenarios, we have a possibility of using IP, because IP is also extremely useful when scalable systems are implemented. Because we have seen IT networks grow from a few hundred systems to a few thousand systems to millions of systems today. And IP has been very robust, and it has remained very scalable without the network collapsing. So IP as such is kind of very relevant and very useful in this. So now when you do the same thing with IoT networks, when IoT networks begin to become larger and larger and larger, like say for example, if you want to talk about connected car technology that is coming up now, in some of the cars you will see connected car tech where you have a 4G SIM or something like that already embedded into your vehicle, and a lot of the information directly goes into the cloud. You get it in the app. Your car company already gets it on the cloud. They are able to see how your vehicle is doing. Is there any kind of breakdown is there or not? All those things are available to them over the cloud. As they sell more and more cars, the network size will grow. But if you are using IP as the network layer, they will not face much problems, because this is a scalable stack, very, very scalable, and it will work very well, right? So it makes a lot of practical sense also. rather than trying out with a new untested technology which people don't know if they will work or not. Simulation studies will help you understand this a lot, but when kind of crores of rupees are involved, people are not willing to do experiments on specific protocols for specific applications. Rather, they would use something which is tried and tested and with a lot of available hardware and software expertise. It makes a lot of sense in that case. It may not be the most efficient system for IoT applications, but because it is very robust and it has lasted for so long, and there's a lot of talent pool available, overall cost of implementing such stacks and dealing with these kind of systems is very low. And that's how this works. Okay. And again, we have already talked about security and management. We already know what are the pitfalls. We already know how to manage this kind of networks. Traditional IT engineers have already been working on this for past 30 years. They know. So that is the major advantage that you have with IPs. We are talking about 8 advantages of IP as a networking layer. Okay, but there are some challenges even now, which is again 2 major challenges that we talk about are these 2. You will find that this 1 second, yeah, you will see that these 2 are the major challenges, mainly because you have constrained nodes which will force you to implement a partial IP stack, because you do not have enough computational resources to implement all of the things. You want to minimize the amount of energy consumption. So unfortunately, you have constrained nodes. And when you have constrained nodes, you have constrained security, which makes it easy for people who are trying to say log in and eavesdrop into your data, or maybe steal your data, or create some kind of disruptions, man in the middle type attacks. So those kind of things, if they're trying to do, it will be a lot more easier for them to use it, because you cannot implement a complete IP stack because of the computational resources required. Okay, and again, the second problem that you have is to handle legacy operational technology protocols. I think I have already discussed this. You have legacy protocols which used to be implemented in industrial communication networks. There is something called SCADA, SCADA. Yes, trying to work with my touchpad. So let's see, CADA. SCADA, Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. This is a D, okay. So supervisory control and data acquisition. So this is a typical term which is used by instrumentation engineers whenever we talk about an industrial control system. So you have a control station. If you have been to an industrial visit or something, you would have seen a a control center which kind of visualizes and sees all the systems working, and they're able to notice what is going on, and they're able to turn on and off the machines from remote location. And overall system control is done at that location. So the control center or the operation center will be the separate unit with a lot of monitors, lot of bulbs, lights, and lot of cupboard like things with glowing lights and switches and all those things. I hope some of you at least may have visited those kind of control centers. Okay, so there what happens is that they usually create an industry-wide network, and some of the industry-wide networks that you will find are not based on TCP/IP. They are based on separate industrial protocols, which are kind of very old and don't kind of work. Even HART kind of protocols are still not very common, but you find that those kind of protocols are used even today. So how do you interface your IP stack with those kind of legacy protocols? It's a challenge, because a company which has been running for past 25-30 years, when they want to switch over their business, when they want to switch over their network from their existing SCADA model to an IoT kind of a system, they want to retrofit. It's called retrofitting. So when they want to retrofit the whole system, it does not make a lot of sense to rip out all the wires and cabling and stuff which is already there and working well for past 30 years and replace the entire thing with IoT. So what you want to do is you want to interface both of them together and make sure that they work in collaboration rather than one replacing the other. Also, the reason is because the company will not want its system to be shut down like for a unspecified amount of duration when you replace the wired communication OT protocols that they have with the unwired ones. You have to defeat the devices, you have to modify testing it. It will take a very long period of time, and the company's profitability or the factory's profitability will drop accordingly. So they don't want to do that. So a seamless integration is required, and for that you need to have the major challenges that the IoT engineers face there is to integrate the IP stack with the existing legacy SCADA or operational technology protocols. Can we go to the next slide?
Yes, sir.
Sixth one is stability and resilience. We already know resilience because it's been on there for 30 years, so it's obviously very resilient. And it is very stable because we have not seen many cases where the system has crashed because somebody else logged into the system. Right? So stability and resilience, robustness, all these things are the same. And the second thing is the consumer's market adoption. So you will find that in case of IoT networks, as in case of any IT network also, if you have any customer facing type application, most of the people will be kind of using or accessing this kind of networks using either PC, mobile, or laptops. So whenever people are doing like that, the most common protocol that kind of works for laptops and mobile phones and PCs or tablets, whatever you may have, all of them basically run on IP, right? So even with your laptop, mostly like it runs on IP. You do not want to use a separate device to interact with your IoT network. You don't want a separate handheld to do this. You already have a mobile phone. You already have a laptop. You should be able to log in and see what is happening at your home. Why should you use another device that is tailor-made only for this, that runs on another protocol? The investments and the hassle of carrying it around is just not worth it. So already existing devices use IP. So why not in the IoT networks also use IP? So the integration is possible. So it makes a lot more sense in that case, and people are also a lot happier because they don't have to carry a separate device or separate adapter with your laptop or your mobile phone to convert that, or separate chip in your system to convert that into the IP and then so get the things out. And then again you have innovations. So another thing is that you have seen IP evolving over a period of time, and there are still modifications which are going on with IP. It's not a proprietary protocol. IETF continues to work with this. They are doing a lot of work on kind of modifying the stacks for IoT applications. A lot of studies are going on, a lot of discussions are going on, continuous improvements are still happening. So as a result of this, we have the advantage of using IP for IoT systems. We believe that this will evolve even further, and IoT systems will in near future become more robust, and they will be able to handle constrained devices a lot better also. So that is one thing. So these are the 8 things that I was talking about, and the next thing that we are going to see is what is the need for optimizing IP. In between, if you have any questions on these 8 things that we have just discussed, please go ahead and ask. Okay, so if there is nothing else, can we just go to the need why IP has to be optimized a little more? We had a brief discussion, but we'll just have a detailed discussion on why we should be using IP, or why do you need to optimize IP for IoT applications. Okay, shall I go ahead?
Yes, sir.
Right. So these are the reasons why we have to go for optimizing the IP stack. So you can see we talked about constraint nodes. We talked mainly about 2 problems in the case, if you remember. So the presence of constraint nodes is a major challenge because First thing, we will have an unreliable path. Why is it an unreliable path? The path is unreliable because we are using very low power communication, and if you remember, we are using low power lossy type communication, right? Low power lossy communication. So if you have a low power lossy communication because of the constraints of power and constraints of resources, the problem is that the path also will be unreliable. We do not have high energy bursts of electromagnetic radiation going, just like your Wi-Fi modem. You do not have the kind of the luxury of plugging your Wi-Fi modem into a power socket and transmitting at high energies. That is not going to happen when you have a small wireless sensor network or a small moat which is sitting somewhere away with a small battery which is supposed to work for 2 years. So that is unfortunately the case, because of what? Because of which you have a unreliable network path, and as a result of this, you will have a lot of packet drops. Um, you have very little reliability. If you transmit it, is it going there or not? That itself you don't know. Even if it goes there, you may require multiple transmissions to get the data there. So unfortunately, it's kind of a trade-off that happens at that look at that kind of a situation. Okay, and then there is also another problem where you have unpredictable amount of throughput and very low convergence rates. So now, the what do you understand by unpredictable throughput? What I mean by unpredictable throughput is when you have situations when the nodes, the sensor nodes, are allowed to transmit only when they detect an event. Like for example, say surveillance cameras, right? So surveillance cameras could be designed to transfer data to the cloud only when they detect movement. Okay, so in an IoT network with surveillance cameras, each surveillance camera with its associated processing could be considered a node, and each of the surveillance cameras will transfer data only when they detect movement. Okay, and usually what happens is that for long periods of time there will be no movement happening in the camera's field of view, and then suddenly you will see people coming up or something like that, and then you will require to transmit large amounts of data very quickly. So the throughput values will keep on changing, right? So for that small burst of duration when people are arriving there, your camera is picking up all those things and it wants to transmit everything immediately. But for rest of the day, nobody is there, so there is no data which is being transmitted, or at least 1 frame or 2 frames per second is being transmitted. So your throughput has suddenly fluctuated from say 1 frame per second to about 20 frames per second, and then it again drops down after a couple of minutes to again 1 frame per second. Oh, sorry, 1 frame per second or 2 frames per second. So that is the problem with throughput, right? So when you have, and typically the IoT systems are designed to do like that, because when there is no work happening, you should try to conserve as much energy as possible. So they kind of go into sleep mode or hibernation mode, and only when some event happens, they get triggered, and then they begin to transmit. So in that way, you have the problem with unpredictability in the throughput. Okay, and the third thing that we are talking about here is that you may be able to implement only a stripped down version. Why? Because resource constraints are there. The more number of layers you put on the proper IP stack, or if you implement the entire IP stack, you are required to do that many amount of computations extra. Insert a header, remove a header, put a footer there. If you want to kind of error correction, so many things are involved in this. All of them require you to put those in the hardware. That much extra amount of computation is required. Every time you add or multiply or you move a bit, you are using up energy. Every addition or deletion of a bit or a byte actually adds to the energy consumed. So you minimize the movement or minimize the amount of uh, computations in order to save as much energy as possible. And that is also where the coding also becomes very critical. You try to do coding which can minimize the amount of multiplications and additions, because every time you do this kind of operations, you are turning off and on multiple transistors inside the chip, and when you do that, there is a power loss. So whenever you are trying to optimize the code, always optimize for power in such cases. So there are different coding styles to help you do this. Okay, so we just don't type if then else and do whatever we want and just submit it. It doesn't work that way. So there is specific type of coding. Every addition, every multiplication that you do, division obviously can be done as shifting and multiplication. So every addition that you do, every shifting that you do, all those things will add to your energy consumption. So unfortunate, but you have to learn a different style of coding in order to optimize this. That you will learn once you go into. We do not have enough time to do that, so will not be looking at that, but it is possible to do that. And then there are specific type of IDEs which are capable of helping you do that also. Right, so that is another thing. And then you have yeah, so that is the main thing that you have to look at. So obviously in those cases the optimization of IP stack is needed because you want to ensure a minimum power consumption, as reliable communication as possible, and handling fluctuating throughputs, not consistent throughputs like you have in your Ethernet. Right? When you are Ethernet connected, you have unlimited amount of power. Your PC is connected to something else, or it has got a huge battery in it, and you can continue to transmit at 100 Mbps or whatever you want, but not with IoT devices. Okay. So just 1 second. It's 9:30 now. I'll just go on for 5 more minutes and then we can stop. Okay, so the next thing is that you have a problem with the implementations of low bandwidth. This is what we were talking about when we were talking about unreliable type communication. What do you mean by unreliability? The reason is this: because they cannot use high-speed network because of technologies which use low bandwidth. For example, LoRa. If you're implementing LoRa, you have very limited bandwidth. So even I mean, like if you want to if you have a lot of data to transmit, you are constrained by the bandwidth. A very few kbps is what you can transmit data at the rate. So because of that, you have transmission related issues. And another problem is we have already discussed this, so I'm just repeating it again. You have very limited transmit power because you want to conserve power, and you may be third point problem is you may have a situation where you have very limited network services, which means that you could be installing it in a jungle, or you could be installing it in a mountain or somewhere else where you have very limited access to already available networks which you can piggyback. So there may be no internet connection, there may be no 4G network, there may be no microwave towers to transmit your data over. So unfortunately, you have very limited amount of network services available. Most likely, you may have to create your own ad hoc network to transmit the data. So in those cases, the network becomes totally constrained. Please remember, we were talking about constrained nodes in the previous case. Now we are talking about constrained networks. Okay. So these are the two major problems why we need to optimize the IP stack. So there are some other issues also associated with constrained nodes, constrained networks. The other set of problems that you have is the amount of latency and packet loss. This we discussed in the previous slide itself, because you have a very unreliable communication. You have implemented very little amount of error correction in the network because of the constraints in your devices. So you have a chance where you may lose a lot of data which is coming in. Data becomes unreadable or corrupted when it arrives. So that is another small thing. So again, we are talking about the packet delivery rate. It may kind of switch between anything from about a few hundred packets arriving to a few thousand packets occurring as a burst of information when the event trigger type devices are available. So that is kind of implement as far as network is concerned. They talk about it in terms of the packet delivery rate. So the amount of packets delivered. You remember I gave you just an example of a camera which is kind of picking up only movement. So whenever movement is there, data is transmitted. So the number of data packets which are transmitted when movement is detected will be very high when compared to cases when the packets there is no movement detected. Number of packets which will be transmitted will be very low. So you have highly fluctuating network traffic. So how do you design your network in such a way that it's able to handle such fluctuating network? This is a major challenge, because you cannot by default design the network to handle maximum amount of traffic it will ever receive, because that basically means that most of the time that network will remain unused, that bandwidth will remain unused, and the bigger the bandwidth you have, the more amount of resources you are using. So unfortunately, and dynamically changing the bandwidth is also very difficult, because each access technology has its limited bandwidth sizes. So that is some challenge that you have to deal with. How do you handle a situation when all nodes are trying to transmit data at a very high rate, and when most of the nodes are not working? So bandwidth will continue to fluctuate, and sometimes there will be congestion, sometimes there will be no congestion, sometimes there will be nobody will be transmitting, sometimes everybody will want to transmit at the same time. So how do you deal with those kind of scenarios, right? And then you have loss of connectivity which happens. That also can happen, because if you're trying to create some kind of an ad hoc network, or network where the data jumps from one node to the other, there may be loss of connectivity, because the node to which you are trying to transmit may kind of go to sleep. In those cases, it may not be even visible to your network. So how do you deal with those things? Connectivity may get lost. So that is one challenge that we are looking at. So this is all something which you will find in both wireless communication systems as well as narrowband powerline communication links, because you will find fluctuations happening very wildly because of the events that are happening. So mostly if you have an event triggered type system, which most of the IoT systems are, you will have to deal with such a network problem. Okay. So I think I'll stop with this for today. Is there any questions or any queries so far? Please go ahead and ask. We have 5 more minutes to go. Hello. Any questions?
No, sir.
Okay, and one more small thing. Have you people been working with Cisco Packet Tracer?
Sir, some people are working with that, sir. We have a project in computer network, so